1 through 3. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, those he redeemed from trouble and gathered from the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. Now our psalmist here is just going to lay the background. This is an introductory statement, and he is going to then develop the rest of this psalm based on these opening premises that we need to give thanks because he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. If you were to look at the very last verse of this psalm, it says in verse 43, let those who are wise give heed to those things and consider the steadfast love of the Lord. So we are urging all of us this morning to consider the steadfast love of God. Now in this psalm has some unique features to it. First of all, you will notice that in verse 4, verse 10, verse 17, and verse 23 introduces a section that says some. Now our psalmist, as you know, if you read and enjoy the Psalms as I do, that these Psalms are the raw expressions of our emotions. And sometimes in these pieces of poetry, we are angry with God. Sometimes we just don't know what's going on with God. Sometimes we may even accuse God of things that he didn't do. But I want to share with you this morning that there's our 4 categories that are just examples of human experience. So, follow me in verses 4 through 9. Some, not all, but some, wandered in desert wastes, finding no way to an inhabited town, hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted within them. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way until they reached an inhabited town. Let them give thanks. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind, for he satisfies the thirsty, and the hungry he fills with good things. Now some in our masses of humanity, and perhaps some of you sitting here this morning, feel as though you are in a desert place. Now I don't know what that means for you, but you are experiencing a time when you feel that you may be feeling that you are alone, that you are under the gun, so to speak, and that you are wondering where your deliverance may come. Some maybe took a wrong turn in life and have become disoriented, maybe spiritually depleted until God restores them to community. You see, the beautiful part here is there in verse 7, he led them by a straight way until they reached an inhabited town. That's what we all need. That's what we desire. We want to be a part of a thriving community. We want to feel as though we belong to someone. I know certainly that that's true in my life. Now I'm moving through these rather quickly because this is a large text here, but if you will go then down to verse 10. Some, not all, but some, and it could have even said some others. Some sat in darkness. See, they're not moving around in desert places. They're sitting in darkness and in gloom, prisoners in misery and in irons. For they had rebelled against the words of God and spurned the counsel of the Most High. Their hearts were bowed down with hard labor. They fell down with no one to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness and gloom and broke their bonds asunder. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love and for his wonderful works to humankind. For he shatters the doors of bronze and cuts in two the bars of iron. Now it may be today that there are some who are living in bitterness or resentment or unforgiveness. And the text says that God comes into their lives and breaks down the bars, our bars, and we are thriving, or we are not following the Lord, and our life may be depleting slowly. Now, the good news is that when we realize this, all we need to do is just call upon the name of the Lord. All four of these groups did exactly the same thing. There was a situation in the life of the individuals. There was a response from the people. There was a response from God and a call to celebrate God's freedom. One of the things that is very popular among Baptist churches, you forgive, I've got to digress here once in a while, is that they're very good about giving testimony, to talk about what they believe that God has been doing in their lives. Maybe we should reinstitute that somehow. Maybe we ought to have a time where we can come together and say, man, I've been really sore, been really hurting. I just feel like I'm all alone in the world. And another saint would likely respond and say, just hold on, trust God. He will deliver you. When you pick up at verse, let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself, down to verse 17. Some were foolish. This, if you have the New Revised Standard Version, it says sick, but there's a footnote here. Through their sinful ways, and because of their iniquities, endured affliction. They loathed any kind of food, and they drew near to the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. He sent out His word and healed them. Let me read that again. He sent out His word and healed them and delivered them from destruction. Let them thank the Lord for His steadfast love, for His wonderful works to humankind, and let them offer thanksgiving sacrifices and tell of His deeds with songs of joy. Perhaps this is a metaphor for depression. This nation is probably the richest per capita of any people in the whole world, and yet we know that depression is a big issue. That's probably why in an hour's program you see 12 commercials on antidepressants or antacids, because your stomach's churning all the time. Now, so this may be representative for us of those of us who just feel as though we are either in darkness or gloom, if you go back to the previous section of verse 22, or because we are afflicted, maybe because, again, we have lost our way. Now, this is probably a more accurate description of what we think of depression, because it says that they do not even want to eat, and they draw near to the gates of death. One of the alarming trends in our country is the suicide rate. People just taking their lives. Unfortunately, maybe some of those stories are overshadowed by 18 people being gunned down at a Walmart. Those are both bad, and we lament losses of that kind. God does not intend for us to stay in our pitiful depressions or in our wandering places in the deserts. God wants us just to come to Him and just beg Him for His mercy. Call upon His name and come and receive the salvation of God. Now, when you come to verse 23, you have the last section. This is rather lengthy, so I will try and abbreviate it a little bit. This is one that is not caused by you. This is not part of a normal human condition. Some went down to do merchandise in ships in the sea, or some went to dig coal out of the holes of the earth, or some are with a job that just does not seem to really satisfy. But they are doing business, you see, verse 23. They saw the deeds of the Lord, His wondrous works in the deep. And if you've ever been out on the Atlantic Ocean, you will identify with this immediately. Verse 25, He commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted to the heavens, then they went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their calamity. They reeled staggered like drunkards and were at their wits' end. I had several occasions to be out on the Atlantic Ocean. My mom and dad, as I probably have shared with you, served as missionaries in West Africa. And we would take a plane up to Paris and then take a train up to Amsterdam and then get on one of the Holland America liners and make our way over to New York City, to the harbor. Believe me, I know that feeling that is described here. When you go up to the heights of and then the ship goes down to the bottom and you can watch the nose hit the bottom first and it plows up the water and you think, I'm done. My mom and dad and my two sisters, once that kind of activity started, were down in their berths with seasickness until about the time we arrived, and I had the great pleasure of going down to dinner or breakfast or whatever and sit at a table all by myself with a steward who would just wait on me anything I wanted because I could survive all that stuff. Well, there are storms in life. There are natural experiences that are not caused by your depression or your not walking closely to the Lord or whatever, but these are just storms of life that just happen. Your job, maybe things happening in your family where you just think, Lord, is this ever going to stop? There are two quick references I'll share with you from the New Testament on the literal side of this. It says in Mark 4:39 that Jesus woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still," and the wind ceased. That goes on, if I didn't read verse 29, but he made the storm be still and the waves of the sea were hushed. And they were glad because they had quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven. In John 6:21, Jesus rebuked the storm again, and immediately the boat reached the land toward which they were going. Folks, we have all kinds of difficulties in our lives. In each of these categories, it tells us that the people, realizing their situation, called upon the name of the Lord, and God brought a deliverance. Now, testing comes in a variety of modalities, if you will. Some, the text says, experience this. Some experience something else. Some experience a third way, and even a fourth. All of these experiencing the difficulties and the challenges of life. And then we read in 1 Corinthians, Paul says, no testing has overtaken you that is not common to everyone. God is faithful, and he will not let you to be tested beyond your strength, but will, with the testing, also provide a way out so that you may be able to endure it. No Christian, no believer, no child of God is without testing in their lives. In fact, towards the end of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews says that if you are without testing, you're not really a child of God. So we've got another issue there that we need to look at. Not today. That'll be for another day. Now, in each case, the people called upon the name of the Lord, and God responded to that call of faith. Now, I don't know if Tom and Nancy know about our son Joel, and he's got some medical difficulties, and that sometimes necessitates that either one of us has to sit on the couch with him and to help him through the night. Believe me, I burned all kinds of holes through that holy veil into the throne room of God on Joel's behalf. And I will tell you that to this day, God has faithfully always responded by getting us safely through the night and back into some level of normalcy within a couple of days. But God does that. And then as we receive the blessings of God, we need to stop and give thanks for those blessings and share those blessings with other people. Now, why do Baptists like to testify? because their words and their experience and wherever they are in their lives can be a refreshment to others that may be going through life circumstances. This is why those who are in recovery attend as many AA or NA meetings as they possibly can. And they tell their stories. Why? Because it gives encouragement to others that are still struggling, perhaps with their relapses or whatever it may be. There's something about the telling of recovery that is helpful, because otherwise, why would we attend church, or why would we attend an AA meeting if there's no benefit to it? So the Lord responds. But we should always in here, it says, in each of these sections, let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to all mankind. Now I'm going to go back to that last verse just briefly and reiterate this again. Let those who are wise give heed to these things and consider the steadfast love of the Lord. You see, it's not about you, and it's not about me. Now, when you're in these troubles, yeah, you feel like it's all about me, Lord. Why me? But it's really because when we in faith will depend on God and will call upon him, and we experience his joyful deliverance, that we then can give thanks to Almighty God for his many kindnesses. In your confession, I wrote in there about stoically enduring all of this. And that God doesn't want you to stoically endure. If you're having some troubles, then, just like what Anne said, his eye is on the sparrow. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. Why? Because it's all about Anne? No, it's all about her Lord. And so we can rejoice in this. And so today, as I conclude these remarks, consider with me, please,